tuned into InvisiYouth Chat Sessions, a video podcast series. Our episode starts right now. Here's your host, Dominique Vale.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the InvisiYouth Chat Sessions, where you can check in for your dose of stigma breaking, empowerment building, humor filling, life hacks and motivation tips for all of the medically adultish people in your life. I'm Dominique Vale, founder of InvisiYouth and your host for the show, and today is episode 14 of the Chat Sessions. So today's going to be a little bit different than most of our other episodes. Like many of you know, this past September, the world lost one of its brightest and most generous lights when the cystic fibrosis activist, YouTuber, motivational speaker, and founder of Claire's Place Foundation, Claire Wineland, passed away. And for the years since I had launched InvisiYouth, I was really fortunate that I got to chat with Claire since we started the charity, and were able to begin building a friendship with one another, talking about a lot of our mutual philanthropic similarities and passions. And even more excited for us, earlier this year, Claire had agreed to become one of our global brand leaders, which I know a lot of you guys were so excited to have her be a part of our InvisiYouth family. And a lot of the times when we chatted over messaging and email and on the phone, we were talking about ways that our charities could work together and that her and I could work together, and seeing what we could do to empower more young people with chronic illness and disability, or as Claire would say, to have them thrive in life. And so one of the many plans that we talked about, one of the ones that was going to happen the quickest, was having Claire be one of our guests on this first year of the InvisiYouth Chat Sessions. And we were planning out that episode throughout the earlier months of 2018. But obviously we didn't get that chance. And so for many people, obviously, there was a big grieving process of those who really loved Claire and knew her on all different scales on September 2nd when she passed away. And I know for myself, and going back to the InvisiYouth team a few weeks later, having to plan out what was going to happen for the rest of 2018 in our programming, and especially for the chat session episodes, there was just this glaring ache of where Claire was supposed to be. But for me, and I know for the rest of my team, there wasn't an option to not have Claire on the show. We had to find a way. And I know something that her and I talked about, and that I made a promise to her, was that no matter where our work took us or where our lives went, we would always find a way to continue working together, and we would get creative with it and figure it out, as I was telling her. So today's episode is an inception of that creativity of still having an episode with Claire. So today's episode is really not only just a celebration of what Claire and I had been planning to put in our episode where she was a special guest, but also talking a lot about what were Claire's main mission points and the work she was doing, and what Claire wanted everyone who listened to her speak be inspired by and listen with her. And then really just a celebration of the wonderful legacy that Claire has left for all of us. And make sure you stay until the end of the episode, because I also have a very special guest joining us. She is an amazing woman who I'm so fortunate and grateful that I'm getting to know as well. And she is the executive director of Claire's Place Foundation, but number one role is she is a mom of two lovely young ladies. She's Claire's mom, Melissa Yeager, so definitely stay until the end of the episode where I get to have a little chat with Melissa. So, okay. So going through this, I wanted to figure out what would be the first video of all of the videos that Claire had done. What should we start with? So I figured I should start with the one video that I was introduced to Claire on, her first YouTube video that I ever heard and saw. I remember telling her this story, and she was sort of laughing mortified at how excited I was over this. But definitely I was in college, I was writing a term paper probably well past 1 a.m. and had YouTube on autoplay, and how many people sort of dropped into the rabbit hole that was Claire's YouTube life. I remember hearing this very unique raspy voice come on through my laptop speaker, and one of the most epic, slightly morbidly humorous intros I've ever heard still in YouTube history came on, and I knew I had to stop my paper and watch who was this girl having this intro? And so hopefully you guys will have the same reaction I did. So definitely take a watch or listen here.
So I'm dying. Faster than everyone else. So I have cystic fibrosis, if you guys didn't already know that, which is a chronic illness, meaning I've had it my entire life and was born with it, that causes an overload of mucus in all of my organs, and they pretty much all just shut down over time. Cystic fibrosis is terminal, meaning it ends in death. And it is also progressive, meaning that as you get older, it gets worse. Someone explained it to me a while ago. Imagine climbing a mountain and there's a giant snowball hurtling your way and you have to get up the mountain fast before it hits you, right? So you're climbing up this mountain, but every single, let's say few miles, you get a giant weight put on your foot. And so as you're getting higher, it's also getting harder and harder to climb, but you have to climb even faster because you have to get to the top before that giant snowball comes and whacks you off the cliff. That's pretty much what having CF is like. Because every year it gets harder and harder for you to fight, pretty much, because every year you're getting sicker. The problem with cystic fibrosis and with our whole life expectancy thing is it's not like any other illness where there's a treatment you take that either cures it or doesn't cure it. It's not death or no death. It is how much you work on your own health directly determines how long you're going to survive. So if you are someone who procrastinates doing treatments and taking care of yourself or doesn't do it as well as you should, you're gonna die. You're gonna die sooner than everyone else. And the doctors are probably gonna guilt you and make you feel terrible for letting yourself die faster than everyone else. So it kind of sucks in that sense, especially once you get to be a teenager, because I have literally been doing hours of breathing treatments my entire life, and the amount of time I've been doing treatments has been getting more and more and more and more and more as I go, and I've been getting sicker all at the same time, and it's harder than it's ever been in my entire life. And when you get to that point, and I know I have my own ways of dealing with it, and I've met tons of other CFers who are at the exact same point as me, and what do? I mean, when you really have so much work, so much energy needs to be put into staying alive, but yet you're not really going to. I mean, really you're just buying yourself more and more time, but it's exhausting. So when, how do you deal with that? And that's something I wish I had an answer for everyone, but I'm still trying to deal with that.
There's so many things that I love about that video. One of them is just Claire's insight, besides her amazing sense of dry sarcastic humor, which you can tell at the top, but just her insight into her life living with cystic fibrosis and really how that was something so similar to so many young people, to teens and young adults living with all illnesses and disability, that it can be really challenging as you're growing up and wanting to find a sense of normality in life. I know that was something Claire talked about often, was it's a full-time job to often have a chronic illness, and it's hard to maintain, and sort of knowing that is amazing. And this is just such an expression of Claire's just authenticity, just really expressing that you don't have to have all the answers in life, and that's okay. And every person has their own way of coping and dealing with their chronic illness, and that's fine. And knowing you don't have all the answers, like Claire said, is really valuable. So kind of going off of that, going into our next clip, I know one of the topics that Claire was most well known for was discussing this premise of life and death, and when death is part of your medical conversation, how do you find a coping with that? How do you deal with that conversation? And I know that was a big thing for Claire, was living a life you're proud of and that you value in all aspects of your life. So I know for Claire, this wasn't just for her terminal illness worries, this was also for what she said would be for people going through the diagnosis journey and the unknown medically, or those having life-threatening illnesses, and just people in general. The topic of death is a little, as we were doing in our other episodes, it's a little bit taboo, and it makes people uncomfortable and nervous. And that was a big reason why Claire wanted people to not feel that way when they would talk about it. So naturally, in perfect Claire Wineland signature style, she would have a video titled Dying 101, where she gets to talk about different tips she has when you're preparing for that conversation.
So whether it is by CF, old age, in your bed, surrounded by people that love you, or by zombie apocalypse, we are all going to die. So, now that that's out of the way, how do we actually deal with death? How do we confront it, and how do we not let it control us? Well, as a sick kid who's personally dealt with death my entire life, here are some tips for how to properly kick the bucket. Or properly think about it. Properly, how do you... Because I'm not giving you tips on how to die. So here are some tips on how to deal with our impending death. My first tip, and I honestly think this is the most important of them all, is to think about it. Don't let it be this really far off, scary thing that may or may not happen, that we can't discuss, that we shouldn't talk about with other people. It's happening. It's gonna happen. We're all going to die, and thinking about it is actually the best way to cope with it and the best way to not let it control you. Because when you think about it, when you actually really spend time, like I suggest actually mentally walk through your own death. I mean, as insane as that is, just not necessarily the circumstances, not where or how or when or any of that, but just the feeling of actually realizing that you are going to die right now, and then go through that in your head. And the more you do it, the more you think about it, the more you realize, oh, I really am going to be gone one day. The less it scares you, and the more comfortable you become with the topic. And then when you're comfortable with the topic, other people will become comfortable with the topic, and then we'll stop being such losers afraid of something completely normal.
You know, a big point that Claire makes in that video is that talking about death kind of can bring a coping mechanism to it. And the more that you talk about it, the less unfamiliar it seems, and it actually becomes a coping mechanism for family and friends too. So she was so open in discussing that with all of you and saying that you should continuously talk about it and build a relationship with it, that it's not a way of removing fear or anxiety. Obviously, those are valid feelings to have, because death will happen to all of us on just different timelines for some and others, and it's an unknown. So I know for Claire, that was something she wanted people to really do actively, was build that relationship with death. And one thing I know in this episode you kind of really can see that Claire preached quite often was it builds a sense of inner power when you acknowledge that death is scary and that it's something that's very unknown and can be fearful, but acknowledging that can bring a sense of strength within you as well. And I know, going off of that into our next clip, it's a video that Claire actually posted about a little over 6 months ago onto her YouTube channel. And I know a lot of people who followed Claire's work, especially through her motivational speaking and her foundation and her YouTube work. Claire talked a lot about her own personal health journey and was so very open about her past experiences with close death experiences, and that conversation quite a bit, and how she coped and how she's grown and evolved through it. So in this video that she posted quite recently as a re-upload, she really kind of just sat one-on-one with the camera and hashes out quite a bit of that experience of when she was close and actually did have a flatline, and how she talks about death and grieving in that process is something that I think is really important, and I know she would have wanted to share again.
I wanted to talk about death, and I wanted to talk about what it feels like to die from someone who has personally experienced it, because the world is filled with muddled opinions and everyone's thoughts and feelings on death and how dying feels and how you should or shouldn't approach dying. And I think that a lot of it's misinformation. I think a lot of it is just coming from a place of fear. I think a lot of it is not from people who've personally experienced what it feels like to die. And I also think that a lot of it is just people trying to understand. And it's one of the most fascinating things, I think, in all of what it means to be a human, right? All of the different facets that compose being a human being. I think death is incredibly fascinating, because what I've found is the way that you go about your life is also the way that you end up dying. And I don't mean that in a literal sense, but like the way you mentally deal with life ends up being the way that you mentally process and deal with your death. And I think that there's this notion that if you deal with death gracefully and there's always this one fucking phrase that people say when they're talking about death that annoys the shit out of me. What is it? Oh, if you make peace with dying, that somehow you're braver than the rest, or you've thought about it more, or you're more prepared, or you're doing life better than others if you make peace with death. I am not opposed to people thinking about death or processing it or questioning it. I think it's amazing and that's wonderful. But what I am opposed to is this notion that you can somehow do death properly. Because this is, I think, from my personal experience with it, and if people who are watching this have personal experience with dying, I want to be able to talk to you because I find it fascinating, and I wonder if everyone else has had the same experience as me. But for me, there was no amount of preparation, no amount of thinking about death, wondering what it felt like, coming to terms with what it means, questioning the great beyond. None of that meant jack shit when I actually was dying.
So obviously this is a really hard sort of clip to talk about now in hindsight, but I know it's something that Claire was always really passionate about, was addressing this. So I know this was going to be a big topic on our episode, and I want to make sure we do it justice and talk about it here too with her. So I know one thing is that Claire was very passionate about getting people talking about death and acknowledging that there's a power in being fearful of it, because obviously it's an unknown and it's something that's going to happen. So I know obviously you see in that clip Claire has a lot of passion behind what she's saying, and for her she was just really addressing a main thing, that you can't really prepare for something like that to happen. Preparation doesn't work, and you can't, as she, I'm putting in air quotes, you can't like do dying well, as she said too, because losing life is a traumatic thing. And I know for Claire, she wanted people to know that you can have your emotions and your opinions on it, and all of those are valid. It was just really getting people to think about that. So going off of that too, I want to kind of go into a different clip from that same video of Claire, where she really talks about the empowerment of acknowledging the power of death, and talking about how it really can focus and change your perspective on your own daily life.
Because the whole point of being alive is that, I don't want to get too off on it, but like the whole point of being alive is that you are alive, and that you can make something with this, that we're in a tangible, we are literally the manifestation of some kind of underlying brilliance to how everything works, right? We are in physical form, and we're relating with the physical world around us, and at the same time we are conscious form, and we're consciously relating to the world around us, and consciousness in and of itself is just a physical manifestation, right? It's neurons firing, it's chemical synapses, it's all of that, right? So that's incredible. It's incredible, and you feel that it's incredible when you're dying. And that's the most difficult part about it, is that you're laying there and you're a little kid and you want to hold your mom's hand and you want to cry and you want to hold on, because you feel how incredible it is to be alive. And not in a corny way, not in a stupid, fake, inspirational bullshit way, in a genuine, I don't want to give this up kind of way.
There's just so much good content with that clip. Just really, with Claire, there's so much I'm even mentally kind of laughing, knowing if she was doing that on the show and we were talking, I would probably have to stop her about 3 times, because she just was making so many amazing points for all of you. And really, at the top of it, just saying that life is finite and that it can end, and that is scary, but by acknowledging that fear and not acknowledging that there's a loss, that it's important to know that death means that you're going to be grieving and mourning the unlived parts of your life and the things that you haven't done. But for her, what she's really saying is that's so valuable, is that by acknowledging that, you've sort of taken ownership back into your own life, because now you realize that there's things that you want to do, there's a purpose for yourself, you still want to do more things, and that was the most beautiful thing. And for Claire, that was really a deep-seated root of her message, and what she always talked about was living life with impact and living and thriving in your daily life and what you were doing. And she says so much of that in that clip, is that by knowing that you want to be able to do and accomplish so many things and grow as a person, you're able to really live with that much purpose. I know for her, you're really taking impact in your present days and making something of them. And so that was a big important thing, was that focusing on the present and what you can do with it was important for Claire, especially for those with CF and others with chronic illness too. She really wanted them to know that they have strength to lead fulfilled lives, regardless of a timeline. So switching gears, we are going to stop talking about that topic for a little bit and going back to something I know Claire would probably say lighten the mood a bit. So we're going to switch to another topic that Claire was really, really passionate about, even in her motivational speaking, was how to live a fulfilled life, especially when you have health struggles. And this was something really important for her. She did so much talking about that, of how her life has so much impact regardless of health struggles for her. So I wanted to go into another video that Claire gives advice on things that she has learned from having cystic fibrosis.
There is no situation too terrible to laugh about. Like, I think actually my dad is the best example of this, because he's sick. Like, I mean, his sense of humor is like right up there on my level. So we've laughed about like the most horrendous stuff too. Actually, my mom too. They're both really terrible and have awful senses of humor. And so I remember just growing up, we would laugh about the most ridiculous stuff. You know, really, I've just learned that there's no circumstance and there's no place that is too barren for laughter and for joy and for making things hilarious. Being nice to people saves your life, actually. Like, I'm a very nice human being. I have been since I was very little, but it's kind of a safety mechanism in this weird way, because I would be alone and scared, and, you know, I remember I was 7 years old, and by myself in the hospital, and the doctors would come in and want to do big procedures, and they'd be talking over my head, and I didn't understand anything, and I was in the hospital, and I realized that the only way to get them to respect me was to A, know what I'm talking about, learn, you know, how to be on their level mentally, and B, be kind and wonderful enough that they would want to help me and want to make me feel safe. And when you're dependent on other human beings to keep you alive, it's actually very useful. And then of course, you know, the whole like being nice thing has helped out a little bit in life, I guess.
There's so many things I love about that clip, especially the fact that it's a glimpse into Claire's always stylish hospital room. The twinkle lights, the map in the background, perfect for Claire. She always had really fantastic designs in her hospital rooms, and I know she always loved doing, so that was really nice to see in the background. But another thing is, too, that discussion of humor and kindness. Two words that pretty much everybody would describe Claire with, but she also said were two really valuable tips for people, so that you can find humor in all the good and bad things, so you have this enjoyable element of life, but then also that kindness is a benefit to the people helping you medically, and then also kindness for yourself too was something, because going through an illness or disability, it can be exceptionally challenging at times, but being kind to yourself and allowing yourself to go through the process was very important for Claire to let people know about. So even going off of that, Claire's way of always giving advice, she always was able to motivate people, and a big thing a lot of individuals always said was Claire's sense of humor was so fantastic, and it could motivate an entire group to live life to the fullest, and their outlook on life was always inspired by Claire when she would give speeches, and even on her YouTube channel too. So I know a big thing for Claire talking about was obviously living with a chronic illness and living with CF. For her, you interact with a lot of people who don't have illness, and sometimes that interaction can be a bit challenging. So Claire even did a video where she talks about how you interact with a person who has an illness or disability, how you interact with somebody who has CF. So we're going to take a look at a little clip of that too.
So I've noticed that lots of people don't know how to act around someone who is sick or disabled. So here are a few tips from someone personally dealing with cystic fibrosis on how to behave around a sickling. this is my personal opinion, and you gotta think, I'm coming from living with CF. I've never lived with any other illness. And I know that for a lot of other disabilities, it is very different. So one of the biggest things is people are terrified to ask what's wrong with you. Like, this shouldn't even be this big of a deal, but like every time they're like, so do you mind if I ask what's, why you have this? I'm like, oh my God. It's okay to be like, so what's wrong with you? Don't worry, we know that there is something wrong with us. Like, I feel like a lot of people think that we don't realize that we're different. Like, if we don't want to talk about it, we'll say like, oh, no, it's still kind of like personal. Don't step on my oxygen with stiletto high heels. Anything else is fine. This thing is strong, but stilettos. Just be conscious of it. Like, notice that it's there. Don't like clear the room, but don't like be clicking on it with the heels. Just be aware and don't trip over all the time. This hurts. This, ready? That hurts like a bitch. Please do not subject me to that if you can help it. This seems like total common sense. But if you're around someone who's on oxygen or in a wheelchair, because if they're in a wheelchair, they probably have other problems with the rest of their body, do not light a cigarette. And yes, vapes count. Like, don't anything. It's just not smart and really, really damaging. Don't freak out when I take off my oxygen. Like, this happens on a daily basis. This is actually one of the things that annoys the crap out of me. Like, obviously, if it was gonna kill me to take off my oxygen, I wouldn't be taking it off. I know it's a crazy concept, but I take it off and everyone's like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. I'm like, excuse me? Are you my doctor? No, you're not. Stop.
Claire's laugh is literally one of the best things. That's so much of what I love about this clip of the video, is because Claire has such a fun side to her, and I love that of the video. It's just fantastic about that, is all of Claire's outlook on living with CF and the ways that you can, and tips to interact with somebody who has it. They're just such a level of humor that I really love, because giving such fantastic advice to the thousands and thousands of people that have been fortunate enough to gain advice from Claire. Her humor is what really makes it so relatable, and you can really see that in this clip. There's just so much of it that she really was able to impact people that way. And like Claire was even saying, I'm even having it written down too, the sicklings, as Claire had mentioned it. You really kind of want to vent in a way of what those struggles are of working and interacting with people who don't have illness or disability, and it's not secondhand knowledge for them. But Claire was able to really motivate people and make them laugh on experiences that can be challenging. And you see all of that all the time in this clip too. That was really important for Claire, was to make the youth that have CF, the youth that have health struggles and chronic illness, to make them visible and to use the platform that she really had to make their voices heard and to make change and positive impact for them. And you can see a lot of that in why Claire would address these topics and make jokes in this way, is because it was motivating people to open their minds and change the ways that they interacted as well. So kind of going off of that, we're going to go into another clip of Claire. I know one thing that Claire loved doing and was very passionate about was making positive change and allowing people to think deeper about themselves so they could grow and evolve and be their best versions and live a life that they were proud of. And a lot of times Claire might even was very passionate about the work that she did. And even if it ruffled feathers, Claire would still talk about it, because she wanted people to just think deeply and really think inwardly on themselves of why they had passionate responses to things in all different polarized ways. So I know it challenged them, it made them think deeper, it made them improve to themselves. It's something I really hope that Claire knew she had such a massive impact on people and how they were able to improve themselves from learning from her. And I know one of these topics that had a bit of back and forth polarized opinions was when Claire talked about a bucket list and the benefits of it and the sometimes problematic elements of having one. So here's a little clip of that.
But I think it is fundamentally selfish to have bucket lists like that. And I think it's interesting because there's nothing wrong with that innately. Like, we are selfish creatures. It's fine to do things that you like. What is wrong, the thing that I think is off, is that a bucket list is not going to make you feel better when you die. And I think that's the difference. I think there's nothing wrong with having a list of things you want to experience while you're alive. I think it's great. We are alive, we should experience weird things. Great. Power to you. What I do think is wrong is the fact that we believe that checking things off a list like that is going to make our lives worth living. It's not. Giving something of ourselves is going to make our life worth living. There's very few things that I'm certain of, and that is one of them. That's actually probably the only thing that I'm certain of in this life, is that giving yourself away, giving everything you have to give, is the only thing that's going to make you feel okay.
You know, this is such a hard topic to talk about because people have so many passionate opinions on it. But for Claire, she really cared about making people think deeply and figure out why they had these passionate responses and why they might want to change their opinions or believe more deeply about their opinions. She wanted to especially just stand up for other people that had cystic fibrosis or had different chronic illnesses or disabilities, because she knew people were listening to her. I know talking about bucket lists was something that Claire and I were even going to address on this episode, because there are so many pros and cons to it. So for us, I know a big thing we were kind of figuring out was that bucket lists tend to have these two sides. They are great and beautiful experiences in life, like Claire had mentioned in the clip, but also you have to live life with these beautiful goals you want for yourself and to better yourself by paying it forward and doing a life of good. And there's this difference between having life goals that leave you fulfilled and make you want to be a better person, and then these other experiences that are beautiful and can create sort of happy moments and fond memories. It was sort of that duality that made it a hot and cold topic, and how bucket lists can be a good or bad thing to a lot of people. But I wanted to read a little bit of what Claire actually wrote about this video too on YouTube, and put a comment, because it really just hits on the head exactly how she felt on the topic. So Claire said, "People who are sick deserve to be held to a higher standard. We should be told that we actually have something to offer this world. That doesn't have to negate the fact that we can still do and experience the beautiful and simple aspects of being alive. Doing things that make you happy are worth doing, but they shouldn't be what keeps us alive, because that's inexhaustible fuel. I'm saying that from personal experience. Those who suffer have so much to give this world, not just platitudes or falsehoods about life to make normal people feel better, but genuine depth and value to offer. We stunt that when we believe that the only thing that will give them happiness in life is a bucket list." I know that was really a big goal for Claire, was that people with chronic illnesses knew that they had a worth and they knew that they had something to give to this world. She wanted them to know that they had the same impact as somebody who was healthy in their health, that their life, there was a regardless of health limitations for Claire, that she had a pride in her life with CF, not in spite of having CF, and wanted everyone with a chronic illness to know that and feel that worth for themselves. Their lives mattered, really. I'm just hitting it home. What she wrote on that YouTube video was that you can make your passions be felt and marked on this world on the international scale that Claire had, or even just within your own life and your own community. It didn't matter the scale in which you could do things that your health might limit you in. It's that you had a life of purpose and a life of worth. And that was important for Claire, was finding that strength in yourself, that you can really live a beautiful life of paying it forward and giving of yourself and giving the best parts of yourself to people that would benefit you as an individual, were really important for her. So, switching gears, we're going to kind of go into a different video too, as well, switching the mood, obviously. Like I was saying, Claire really wanted everyone to see those who had cystic fibrosis or any chronic illness the same way that she saw herself, as somebody who was empowered, who had a message, who was motivated, and they had a voice. And yes, they might not have the societal norm of being healthy, in those air quotes of what health really is, but it was somebody that thrived, like I said, with their health struggles, because it's part of who they are. It was something that we really connected on with Claire's Place Foundation and InvisiYouth, was empowering young people to live daily life in a beautiful, fulfilled way with their health struggles of any kind. And so it's not just about what we would do as sort of giving tips on how to empower yourself, but it was also important for us to have a little fun and humor and see the benefits that you can have of living with a chronic illness. So here is what Claire would say would be the upside of being sick.
I tend to believe that we live in a really polar world, meaning like where there's a lot of beauty and joy, there's also a lot of pain. They come hand in hand. So with sickness, it's not just terrible. There's also this other side of it, these blessings, so to say, of living with an illness. So here are some of those. One of my favorite things is that every little thing you do is like a huge freaking accomplishment. Like a normal person gets up, get dressed, goes walking or something. When you're sick and you get up and like get dressed and all that, you're like, another day, she's alive for another day. And then like you go walk the dog and you're like, you walked up that hill. Way to go, Claire, way to go. And I do it to myself all the time too. When I'm coughing or when I'm sick or something, I'll like crawl out of bed and I'll go like brush my teeth and I'm like, you know what? You could have just stayed in bed. You could have said just like, screw it, you're sick, but you didn't. You got out of bed and you did this shit. That is amazing.
The reason I love that video so much is just the intro itself is so effortlessly a big part of what Claire stood for and what meant so much to her, was discussing that there is this yin and yang, the polarity of life. There's the good and the bad, the positive and the negative, the happy and sad, and that it shouldn't just be equated to people who live with a chronic illness or a health struggle. It shouldn't just be the, oh, I'm so sorry for you, that your life is only one thing. It's only the sad and the negative and the apologetic, that even in that life you can have beautiful and positive things. You should. It's a yin and yang. And that was something that was so important for Claire, to people to know that life is beautiful, that her life was beautiful, and everyone with a chronic illness has beautiful, happy, humorous, funny moments built into the health struggles. So that was really an authentic thing for Claire, was to be able to express that for her. And I kind of love that video so much because, total side note, I still even give this like mental congratulations, like a little cheer goes off in my head every time I can climb a flight of stairs, because it's been 10 years since my injury and my chronic illness, and I remember when I couldn't do that at all. So to me, it's this, I can totally relate. When Claire said you kind of give yourself this immediate congratulations, and people around you get very excited when you can do the quote unquote normal things as well. It's just because of living life, you have to kind of keep it interesting, keep the perks of it. So even I want to go back to the video too, on a different part of it, where Claire talks about sort of the best things about having an illness, and I know that's something she would be expressing to all of you now.
A really cool thing about being sick is this amazing platform that you get to do something in the world. People really listen and kind of care about people who are sick. There's like a maternal instinct where they want to take care of us, and they feel like we're this other thing, which is kind of weird in some senses, but it does give you this opportunity to really spread a message and have people listen and have people hear you and really make an impact. People who are sick, people who have, whose lives are a lot more challenging by social norms and all of that. It takes so much more energy for us to even be here, for us to exist, for us to function normally, and people see that. So I always felt, and maybe this is just one of my mechanisms to getting by, but I felt like it's almost a responsibility to do something incredible with this. I have people listening, so what am I gonna say, kind of thing. And that's always been a real blessing for me.
I love this part of her video so much because Claire viewed her life with a chronic illness, with cystic fibrosis, as her platform, as a frame of her way of looking at her life and the world, and how she could inspire it and improve it and want people to have that as well. I know she said it even in the video, but I want to reiterate it for everyone, is that yes, sometimes the world can view you living with a chronic illness as they will give you the platform to speak, because they might feel sympathy or pity because, oh, you have health struggles, and that's the reason they're kind of giving you this platform to listen. But for Claire, it was that she was going to take that time that people gave her of letting her go on a stage and speak, of taking time to watch her videos or follow her on Instagram or see her YouTube channel, because they were taking the time to watch her. She was going to make an impact with that time and make people listen and make people improve themselves and improve their daily life with the platform she was given. So you can kind of think of it of those two ways. Well, do you want to look at the negative and you want to look at it, well, I hate that society sometimes is judgmental, or they feel pity for me because of my health, and it bothers me that I'm getting opportunities because of my health struggles? Or do you want to look at it as, I'm getting these opportunities because of my health struggle, and I'm going to make a hell of a difference with those opportunities? I know Claire would probably want all of you to choose that second option and use your platform to motivate other people and improve life. So going into our next clip, I know so many of you guys have written to us and have had thousands and thousands of people have written about Claire as well, that she has taught you all so much and you've learned from her over the years. I know I've learned a lot from her too. Claire was able to give sort of the sagest advice. I say she was even better than a fortune cookie or a Yoda analogy. She gave such sage advice that people could immediately relate to. There was humor, it was heartfelt, and I think that authentic Claire-ness, in a way, that Claire-ness, is what made people motivated by her, and they could learn life lessons from her, was because she had so much heart behind it and so much passion in wanting people to be their best versions of themselves and grow and be empowered and thrive every day. So I want to kind of go on that note into this next clip, because this is where Claire was giving some advice to her younger self, and especially living with CF for her. And this is such important advice for other young people that are living with chronic illness.
Don't let anyone, especially doctors and nurses, make you feel small. It's hard when, I know it's really hard being alone in the hospital for long periods of time and feeling the need to completely take care of yourself by yourself. But doctors guilting you into making you feel bad for not, doing everything that you could do. No kid your age is gonna try and be taking care of themselves perfectly. It's just not normal. So stop guilting yourself and stop letting other people make you feel small or wrong or like a horrible person, because you're not, you're just a kid. I think the most important thing that I can tell you is really to just be yourself. I mean, honestly, love yourself for who you are. You being perfect all the time isn't what makes people love you. What's gonna make people love you is the fact that you're unique and that you're strange and that they find something cool in that. So even if you're not perfect all the time, the world's still gonna accept you. I mean, maybe not everyone's gonna accept you, because that's not normal. We're not supposed to all love each other and be happy and rainbows. But I don't know, accept that some people aren't and still do what you want to do. Stop trying to please the entire world, because you're going to be freaking exhausted.
The thing that stands out the most is that literally time marker. That's probably less than 60 seconds, and Claire can just motivate your entire life in 60 seconds. It's just amazing advice that she just hits right on the mark. Doesn't even need a minute of time, and she can hit it right on the head immediately. Is that this is an issue that so many young people and older youth, these teens and young adults with chronic illness feel, that you feel bad, or you feel like you're not doing enough to improve your health, or you're not experiencing enough that your friends are doing, that you kind of consistently want to feel bad about the way that you are living and not doing enough. And if there's changes in your health, especially, you feel those setbacks 10 times more because you think you should be doing more. But Claire wanted people to feel empowered with their health struggles and sort of take in those setbacks even, and just as other life experiences, and to never apologize for your life. I know something we both agreed on, and I know she says so often in her speaking work, is that people would say, "I'm sorry," because of living with a chronic illness. You always get the "I'm sorry" from people, and Claire never lived a life that she was sorry for, and she never wanted anyone else with a chronic illness to feel that they should gain an apology, that their life was something they should feel sorry for, that she was never sorry for having CF. In fact, it motivated her to have this platform to show people how beautiful life can be, and that there's beauty in sadness, and that you can thrive living in the now and being appreciative of the things you have and not focusing on what you might not have, especially with a health struggle. You're sort of wanting to excel and find a cure and find a recovery, but you should be just living in the moment and appreciating what you have and being proud of what you're doing. I know that's really sage advice that Claire always gave, was be yourself, be proud of yourself, love yourself, that your potential is a lot wider than what society might deem for you, and just completely kind of kick the ass out of life in a way, as authentic as Claire would be doing, and as much as you can do too. And kind of going off of that, I know Claire used her platform to talk quite a bit. She loved talking, as many people know. And when Claire was speaking, there were hundreds and thousands of people that were inspired by her work, whether seeing her in a speaking engagement or a fundraiser or a Claire's Place Foundation event, or through a computer screen, on her YouTube channel or on her Instagram. And Claire oftentimes in her work would give people these little golden nugget rules and sort of words of wisdom that people could live by. So when kind of figuring out what would be the last clip of Claire to show, it just seemed that not only would we pick a video that was from recently that Claire filmed, but that she literally filmed saying what was the best piece of advice she was ever given. So we're gonna let Claire take you away on that little snippet.
The best life advice I ever got was from a nurse when I was like 7 years old, who was talking to me about how you're never going to be okay in life unless you're comfortable just sitting with yourself. Because no matter what goals you attain and what changes and what grows in your life, it's always fundamentally just going to be you with yourself. And so if you're not comfortable with yourself, you'll never be comfortable with your life. And that's something that I've found to be deeply true as I've grown older.
What you'll always love so much about Claire Wineland is that she gave so much of herself and so much advice in every single day of her life, and that her legacy, her mission of her work, everything really just is timeless, will stand that test of time. She made that impact. And I know she has said this even in other videos, and she has always said that she wanted to be able to improve the lives of other young people with CF and chronic illness. She wanted everyone, even without health struggles, to improve their daily life and to find what they had passions for and to give of themselves and to live their best lives and to thrive in every day, live with impact, make life beautiful for you, things that she was really proud to do in her work, and wanting to have the time to continue growing those things was so important for Claire. I know something we agreed on was that young adults with health struggles should be empowered to know that they can live fulfilled lives and powerful lives and lives that they're proud of. That was something she always said. So that was really important for her. And I know pretty much every person who got to know Claire on every scale would want to tell her that she not only excelled at that, but she accomplished that, and she'll continue accomplishing that in every form that she was able to touch in the work that she was doing, that will continue moving forward. She's going to continue excelling at that, even with not physically being present. She'll, in her own way of still being present, she'll still have that impact and inspire people every day to be their best selves. So kind of ending that portion of the show, you're going to then join me coming up probably in like 2 seconds, where I get to speak to my very special guest. So definitely stay and check that out. All right, everyone. You remember at the beginning of the episode, I told you we were having a very special guest joining me to talk about Claire and her legacy throughout the episode. So this is literally one of the only people I would have wanted to share this episode with, and I'm so blessed and fortunate to have her on now. So many of you guys know Melissa Yeager as Claire's mom, as also the executive director of Claire's Place Foundation too. So for me, this is really the one person that's been so part of Claire's life journey and her work journey, and we're really happy to have her on the show. So I want you guys to all give Melissa a warm welcome. Hello, Melissa. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's good to see you, Dominique. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Like I said, literally the one person I wanted to be able to share this episode about Claire with everyone. So I wanted to kind of start off in the beginning just asking seems like a general question, you would have loads of different answers for, but what have been some of the biggest things that you've gotten to learn from Claire's work throughout all these years that she's been a public speaker and then with the foundation as well?
Yeah. Really, it's kind of like, where do I begin? From the time she was born, she's taught me, so many lessons about staying in the moment. That was a big one. Counting your blessings, all of those positive things. But I think through the foundation, what she wanted to do, her mission was to help individuals living with cystic fibrosis. And there are, a lot of organizations that assist in the fundraising to find a cure.
Yeah.
And Claire saw, firsthand how difficult it was for families to have a child with cystic fibrosis because it can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for their care. And a lot of people are single parents. So she said, I would love to start a foundation to help people that fall kind of in between the cracks of making too much money for social services and not really enough to maintain a household with a child with CF. So it really inspired me. And, that's probably one of the biggest lessons is that it's not about giving a grant necessarily. It means so much more, that someone's there for you, that you're not doing this alone, that somebody cares. And, the experiences I've gained from working with the foundation and the other families that we support is just, I don't even know where to start. There's so many. It's just been a really wonderful and sometimes painful experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Yeah, and exactly like you had mentioned too, Claire was always really big on trying to inspire that tomorrow was tangible to make things better for other families, and even talking about her own life, that tomorrow, that there's something you can do to help other people in a tangible sense, and that was really important to her. That's why a lot of times her and I connected on the charity work that we were able to do together, was just that, helping something that's tangible that they would be able to see the benefit in their daily life too.
Absolutely. I mean, not that a cure is not important, but, the people that are living on the daily with this disease, it's incredibly expensive and hard to keep a job and things like that. So I just was really inspired, and I learned a lot about making a difference for families right now.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah. And what about, I know you've gone to so many speaking engagements and fundraiser events and foundation events that Claire has been able to speak at or be part of. So I know you've really gotten to see, even through social media, just like the amount of warmth that people respond to her with. So I didn't know if there were any sort of standout, like proud mama moments that you have that you would want to like share, just sort of even a little story you might have.
I have to say one of the proudest, well, there's a couple, it kind of all goes hand in hand. When she came out of the coma in 2011, she was in a septic coma after her surgery, and I was quite honestly terrified, for one thing, because it was going to mean a lot of work, a lot of taking care of her. I had to quit my job. I was really afraid, instead of grateful. Like, how can you be grateful for something like that? And when she was able to talk again, and she got off the breathing tube and she was functioning again, she was so inspired by it. And I was just so proud of her, because it would have been so easy for her to be like, oh, this is horrible. My life is ruined. I'm not going to be able to do this, this, and that. And instead, she just completely turned it around. And I think there's a big spiritual practice in a lot of religions and a lot of spiritual backgrounds that being of service to others makes your life better. And she had that at like 13 years old. Like, she already knew that, profound spiritual lesson. so I was incredibly proud of her, and she inspired all of us to start the foundation and to get busy and not feel sorry for ourselves. So, I got pulled aside by many, many of the doctors and nurses saying, other kids in this situation go the complete opposite way, and it's dark and it's gloomy and it's scary and CF is horrible. But I was very, very proud of the way she turned that around into being of service to others and got us to start the foundation. And then another time was right after that, she had her first speaking engagement at a TEDx in La Jolla, California.
Oh, cool.
And I have very bad stage fright, right? And it's so bad that I would get stage fright for her. So I was in the audience, and she was going up after this scientist who was talking about, microorganisms and biology. And I was thinking, oh, I hope she does well. I was nervous for her. She was like, I got this. And she got up there, and I was crying because almost like she was channeling something bigger than herself.
Yeah.
And I was looking around at the room, and everyone was just in awe and completely mesmerized by her message. And people were crying, and she got the only standing ovation. And I thought, wow, she has really got the talent for this. And this is her mission. This is what she needs to do. So I was very, very proud of her from going from, oh, how is she going to do? I'm so nervous, to she killed it,
Yeah.
And then since then, her talking has gotten, way more sophisticated, and her message has always been really clear that, life is what you make it. I mean, that really is kind of what it boils down to. And she's not the Pollyanna, her talk's not happy, joy all the time. I mean, she curses, she says it's horrible sometimes. She's very honest and realistic. And I was just proud of her, the way she expressed herself and inspired other people. And the emails and the texts and social media posts that we get from other people living with cystic fibrosis is she actually changed their course of their life by, the attitude, the attitude of you can either accept it and move past it and make something beautiful of it, or you can stay in that position where it's deep and dark and, you're kind of ruining your own day, So I'm very, very proud of her, of all the work that she's done.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, always just very authentic, authentically Claire. There was just very an essence that was just authentic to her, always.
Yeah, and I have to say, every time she would talk like she talks and post or whatever, I'm like, oh, you can't say that on the foundation stuff. You can do it on your private stuff because that's cool, but you have to keep it clean for the foundation. And she's very expressive and wouldn't be managed,
Yeah.
what you need to say.
Yeah, no, I do. I love that. And even kind of going off of that too, Claire, like you had said in her own channel and the work that she did, she had a very big public passion of using her own health journey to motivate and inspire other people. So I know that for that, even yourself and John, Claire's father, and then Ellie, her sister, all of you guys have been on videos on her YouTube channel or in different engagements for her. So how has that real public passion that Claire had to talk about her health sort of made relationships in your dynamic with her, sort of how did that evolve as she became more public about it?
Well, like I said, in my other answer to the other question, I'm very shy. I mean, I'm incredibly, I'd rather just do it all behind closed doors and put on a happy face or whatever. I'm Southern as well. So that kind of added to that whole, it's all good. But what Claire brought out in us and, through work with the foundation and by going to events and speaking to other families is that it's something so beautiful about sharing your real personal experience.
Yeah.
And as far as her little sister, Claire taught her how to stand up for herself and have boundaries and appreciate herself and focus on the positive. So I think for all of us, we've just become more willing to share our story publicly. And, the benefit is it's unbelievable for what people get from that, and even as terrified as I am to speak in public or to post in public my deep innermost feelings, I think it's really magical because human beings want to feel like they're connecting on a human level.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
John and I had a very hard time in the beginning when she was first diagnosed, and I might cry right now. It was in 1997, and so everything on the internet, which was pretty new at that time, believe it or not, was very, very negative and scary.
Yeah.
And just over the years, watching Claire, following her lead, turning it around, has just been so powerful, so very powerful, because it could have gone the other way. So I'm very, very grateful for that, that she's taught us that lesson. And her father is also a public speaker, and he has his own workshops, and he does men's groups. And I think her being so open inspired him to as well in his line of work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even kind of going off just sort of that family dynamic, what have been some ways that you would say it's been helpful that since you guys have become more open discussing health when Claire was really kind of evolving as a person, how would you sort of advise other families that they have one of their children has a chronic illness of any scale, sort of to have that dynamic with their child?
I'm going to take a sip of water here. Well, I'm not really sure how to answer that one. I would say it kind of leads into what I would share with another family that had a child with a chronic illness. But are you talking more about like what Claire's personal message was and how it helped us in sharing ours?
Yeah, in that way. And then even just within your own household, that you guys having a child with an illness, that what would be that advice that you would give other parents that they know they're going through that too?
Within our household, it's really important for us to be open and honest. And we don't sugarcoat things. We never have. A lot of people don't want to scare their child by giving them all of the information, but we found that it was incredibly empowering for Claire to be a big part of her care and her care team. And any of her doctors or nurses will tell you that she's in charge. Like, we walk in the room. And so for us as her parents, it was learning how to support that, but also balancing the fact that she was a child, So when she was young, we didn't want to get too into all the details about it or the what ifs, and kind of just give her the facts. And then she taught us, and we still apply this today in our life, is that, you can worry all day about the what ifs, but what happens is that it completely destroys your day. And so even Ellie, when she gets into the, what if I make a bad grade or, whatever, I'm like, it hasn't happened yet. You got to stay in the moment because right now is all we have. And she just, she taught us a lot of lessons about communicating interpersonally between each other. Her father and I split when she was pretty young, but we've maintained a wonderful friendship and have raised her together. And we talk a lot. We talk about details. Claire wants to be involved in everything. She wanted to be involved in everything. I think for a family with a child with a chronic illness, I think the most important thing is being realistic and honest. The sugarcoating it, I think, does a little bit of damage because then they're more confused, like what's really going on. But also not always leaning towards the negative, like, could be great, you could be fine, or it could be this. So I think that's something in our family that we've learned and that we're applying today.
Yeah, no, and even going off of sort of real and honest, something else I wanted to talk to you about, and I know this one's probably going to be a bit challenging for both of us too, was you've even mentioned on social media that you've been kind of getting out of your sort of comfort zone and being very open and honest, and that's something that I've so completely admire was since Claire has passed, you've been so wonderful sharing your process of remembering Claire and then grieving her as well. So I wanted to know, even if there's anything you can on how the completely warm response you've had from people in comments about you being open on that grieving process, and if there's any sort of, not even so much advice, but words of advice that you've been given about this or that you would like to pass along in any way.
Yeah, the Instagram, well, for one thing, Claire forced me, I was like, I think I should be on Instagram. And she's like, oh, you totally should. So we were in a hotel in San Diego, and I was in the other room doing my hair or whatever, and I didn't know it, but she was live on her Instagram channel, and she said, hey, Mom, what if I did a, shout out for you on Instagram? How would you feel about that? And I said, oh, no, don't do that. I'd probably embarrass you. And then I walked in the room, and she was live, and then I had like 10,000 followers. Like, it was crazy. So, I started just posting our little story about the transplant. Got a lot of positive feedback about that, and everyone was so excited for her to receive her transplant. So I did little videos of us in the car on the way and at all the appointments, and was getting a lot of positive feedback because there are a lot of people with cystic fibrosis that look for transplant, you know. So it's a big deal to get accepted onto the list. And then when it didn't go well and she had the stroke, I felt kind of an obligation to update people. I have followed people in the past with cystic fibrosis and then they just disappear. If something happens to, or parents, I followed other parents of children with chronic illness, and then they just fall off the face of the earth and you're left kind of like, how can I help? What happened?
Yeah.
So I just started writing, and it's become very therapeutic for me. There are a lot of other parents that respond and that have gone through the same loss. I think sharing about it, finding pictures that, and I have so many pictures and videos that I can't wait to share with everybody because it shows, her different side. It shows her personal family life, and I think it's important to humanize her and to know that grief is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
And gosh, it's really, really hard to talk about it in person. Easier to type about it.
Yeah.
You're never prepared to lose your child, and I didn't have any idea how intense it would be.
Yeah.
So I think it's important because a lot of parents are like, they passed, I knew it was coming, it's okay, and then they kind of disappear. And I think just being vulnerable on social media, which is so unlike me, has been really healing for myself and for many other parents. I found I get emails and private messages constantly about people who have lost children, and it's such a deep and personal and vulnerable place to be. So it's I'm loving it. I have to say it's become very therapeutic for me. Every night I try and post something, but I haven't the last couple of days. Thanksgiving was really hard for me.
Yeah.
And although I'm thankful, I wanted to share that I'm thankful, of course, for all the years we had together, but, you're never going to be the same after you lose your child. And I think it's important to let people know that, that I'm going to be different. My whole life is going to be different. We'll remember and mourn her forever.
Yeah.
My other daughter, Ellie, said, "Mom, your posts are so depressing." Said, "You can't tag me in any of them because they're like so depressing." But I try not to be depressing. I try to just be authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sucks. It's hard to lose a child. Very, very hard.
Yeah.
But I've learned a lot. I got a grief counselor, and she's also a writer, which is interesting. She wrote a book about grief.
Mm-hmm.
It's Basha, and she lost 2 children within a few years, and they were her only 2 children. I don't know how anyone survives that, but she does, and she wrote about it, and she speaks about it, and it goes back to Claire's original lesson that when you give back to others, you feel better. There's something about sharing your experience that makes your life a little richer.
Yeah.
So.
No, absolutely. And I love that you mentioned that it's just, even Ellie saying sometimes you want the joy to be sort of weaved within the sadness too at times, but it's just like you said, it's a complete multi-layered process, and every day brings different feelings or different emotions out of it. So it is, like you said, to be able to post every day and it varies really shows that evolution of that grieving process too, which I think is so beneficial to siblings who've lost siblings or family members as well.
Well, I'll tell you, Ellie was considering, sorry.
Go ahead.
Ellie had a thought, and I thought it was so fabulous because she's 14, and the siblings are oftentimes forgotten.
Absolutely.
They're called they suffer in silence because the family's so devastated they don't feel like they can take, any attention or whatever. But it's also been her whole life of being kind of second fiddle to Claire. So there is a sibling syndrome that goes along with it. And she thought about starting a video log for siblings of people with chronic illness. And I've just been like, yes, because there's really not a lot out there.
Yeah.
And so she's been recording little videos, and we might add them to Claire's YouTube channel or Claire's Place Foundation, in some shape or form for siblings of the chronically ill, because, she refers to it as like the new baby syndrome. Like, everyone loves the new baby. I love the new baby, but she's getting all the attention all the time. They can't, So I think if she were to share her experience, I think it would really do her so much good and so much healing to share that with other siblings. So,
no, absolutely. And it kind of even sort of transitions into the last kind of topic I wanted to mention too was, like I said at the beginning of our interview, you are the executive director of Claire's Place Foundation. So, and then potentially having Ellie involved in other things too. You guys are really keeping Claire's voice sort of moving on forever and keeping that mission of hers moving. So I really wanted to kind of give you this moment to not only say what you would want, what Claire would really feel like she would want other people to continue on doing for themselves in their own personal lives, but then also ways that people can get involved in helping you and the foundation continuing sort of the Claire-ness that is who Claire was.
Well, that's really wonderful question, because right when she passed, I wasn't sure if I could continue working with the cystic fibrosis community, because it's just so deeply painful right now.
Yeah.
But I found that at our last board meeting, I'll start with this. At our last board of directors meeting, we meet quarterly. Mm-hmm. Claire was in attendance, and she said, my goal is to raise $1 million for the foundation so we don't have to run out of money. We can build infrastructure. We can go from this grassroots organization to this, legitimate, bigger organization that helps not only people with CF, but people with chronic illness. Because she got a lot of feedback from the chronic illness community.
Yeah.
The cystic fibrosis community is very small, but she wanted to branch out and assist people living with illness every day. Because, it's very relatable. Mm-hmm. So, So that's our goal, is to continue building and growing Claire's Place Foundation to not only support the people with cystic fibrosis, but possibly in the future others. We have a lot of videos of Claire that we're going to start rolling out. We are also reaching out to the families who we've given grants to and requesting short videos from
Wonderful.
them, saying what Claire meant to them, what the grant maybe meant for them, rather than just, we paid their mortgage and all their bills for them. It's, like I was saying, it's a much deeper feeling of being supported, that you're not in this alone. And so we've requested videos from families, and they're going to start coming in any minute now. We might share them around the holidays. We are also teaming up with Zappos for Good, which is the philanthropic arm of Zappos.com. And we have Claire Quotes t-shirts that are going to be available. So we had one, and now we're going to have several other ones.
Amazing.
And, I know some of them are really cool, like some of her famous quotes, like, it's inevitable. Living a life you're proud of is something you can control, and it'll say Claire Wineland at the bottom. So we're going to start offering those for sale, and Zappos is doing all of our shipping and handling for free, which is amazing. Thank you, Zappos. And so we're going to have things like that to keep people inspired. Yeah. We may work with another cystic fibrosis patient, but in our mind, especially being so new, there's nobody quite like Claire, so I'm not really ready to do that. But Ellie would like to build out a program for siblings.
Yes.
So, we're just trying to keep her in people's thoughts and minds. Mm-hmm. And I love seeing on social media how she's affected their lives. I mean, we get some messages like, I was in such a dark place, I was suicidal. Yeah. And then I happened to find Claire on YouTube, and it completely changed my life. And so that kind of stuff is so important and special to us, because her whole mission was to make a difference in the world. She said it many, many times, even in her video before the transplant. I want to get a transplant so I can do good in the world. Not so I can be healthy, not so I can be fixed, but because I want to do more.
So one thing I really enjoyed that you said was something that I remember was one of the first few things that when Claire and I spoke earlier this year too, that because she had cystic fibrosis and I don't, and I work with all illnesses, including CF with InvisiYouth, that was the one thing I knew she loved the most, was she kept saying, I want to do more with more illnesses, because so many young people with CF, they have, because of the proximity with other people with their illness, a lot of times they meet other young people who have different illnesses in the hospital, and those are sort of the friend groups they get to build on social media and then physically. So I know for her, when I kept saying, you have no idea even the impact she had on my life getting to build the charity. And I remember I told you, and I told her too, I said I completely freaked out when she followed us on Twitter within our first month. I was like, oh my God. I said, it's the real Claire Wineland too. She has a blue check mark. I know it's real. So it was so exciting for us too, and then knowing that this was so important to her was to get the cystic fibrosis community really embedded with the other chronic illness communities too, to really show that unity, because her message was so universal for anyone within, especially within the health and disability community, and then beyond that too. So I love that that's something that you want to be able to continue on with the foundation, and that's sort of a really big stepping stone for them too, and those who are supporting you. I completely love that, and I know I've told you that as well, that for us it's this was a permanent partnership. When I spoke with Claire, this was going to be long-term. We would just get creative. If I wasn't able to physically chat with her anymore, we would just start to have to get too creative on how we could continue working together. So obviously this episode's one way, and then bringing everyone in on the Claire's Place Foundation in your family and bringing them into ours and continuing that partnership and relationship is so important to us, and so we can continue the bringing Claire's energy through everything that we're able to do is really important for us. So I know you'll always have a place in our charities world, always, for that.
Thank you. I think, for Claire, she's probably thrilled wherever she is that we are continuing her work, and that we're speaking with people like you, because she was always so impressed, with the group of people that you introduced her to, and she got to be a part of InvisiYouth. And, and also even more than just chronic illness, I think her message speaks to just the human condition of, all have suffering in some way or another. And that, the positivity and the first accepting, challenges and rather than trying to overcome them, I thought it was wonderful, and I still apply it to my life today. You're not always going to overcome what you're going through. She used to always say, well, what if you're never going to be well? Or what if you're never going to have the dream job? Or, you can apply it to anything, and you have to, take what you have and make the most of it. So we are excited to be in touch with InvisiYouth. I just love that we finally got to meet.
I know.
And when we were in Philadelphia in the hospital, and you were like, I want to come see you. Claire was so sick the last year. It was very, very hard for her to keep any public or any, one-on-one meetings, but she appreciated that you worked with her on Skype and, online and stuff. But as far as the foundation goes, we haven't made decisions yet on how we will expand.
Yeah.
But we are bringing in a board advisor, so she's going to come meet with us on the 19th. She started Barbells for Boobs, which is another fantastic organization.
Yeah.
And she's going to help us kind of level up, a lot of media attention and a lot of donations that came in when Claire passed, which she was probably like, all right, too bad she had to pass away to get it, but we got a lot of attention, a lot of donations. So we're trying to be really wise with our funds and good stewards of that, and grow the foundation into something much bigger, maybe helping people worldwide, or chronic illness, or any disability.
Yeah. And I want to personally thank you. Like I said before, I'm so blessed to have you be a part of this episode, and I want to really make sure that people can find you on social media and also find the foundation. So why don't you let us know where they can find you on Instagram, and then the foundation's accounts as well.
Yep, my Instagram is melissa.yeager and then the number 1, and Claire's Place Foundation is at Claire's Place Foundation. We have a Twitter account, which is Claire Wineland. And Claire's YouTube channel is going to stay up. We are managing it now. Mm-hmm. We'll be rolling out more videos. She's got a documentary coming out, which I am so excited about. Also, movie 5 Feet Apart. Yes. She, consulted on that, and the main character, you're going to freak out. It's so much like Claire. It's wonderful. She almost looks like her and everything. So there's a lot of things coming up over the next year that we will capitalize on and draw attention to Claire's Place Foundation. Our website is clairesplacefoundation.org. We are a 501c3, and we'll probably be doing a year-end fundraiser, like the T-shirt sales and things like that. So stay tuned, because there's a lot more to come.
Yes, and everyone, we're going to have all of those links in the description box on our YouTube channel, and then we're going to have those links as well in the description on all of the podcast channels you might be listening to this on. So definitely check that out. And on our social media, we will be tagging Claire's Place Foundation, Melissa, and Claire as well in everything, so you guys can get in touch and be able to help as well. We really appreciate that, and then we want you guys to spread that season of giving love over to them as well, as much as you guys show it to us too. And as always, you can find InvisiYouth on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at InvisiYouth, and the InvisiYouth Chat Sessions on our YouTube channel and on all of our podcast channels, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and many, many more. Pretty much anywhere that there's a podcast. So make sure you can continue doing that as well. And I want to thank you guys one more time for watching and listening to this episode, all about the wonderful Claire Wineland. And it's our best way to end our 2018 season. And the next time I see you and speak to you will be 2019. So I will speak to you all soon. Bye.